In a luxurious restaurant, a soft voice sliced through the silence like an invisible blade. A hungry baby, an unexpected request, and a heart sealed by pain about to break open. In that moment, something unbelievable began to bloom between two strangers. What started as compassion turned into redemption, family, and true love. Before diving into this heartfelt story, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more soul-stirring stories. Under the soft glow of flickering candelabras, in the most exclusive restaurant in Boston, Michael Bennett stared at his grilled salmon without touching it. At 52, the real estate magnate had grown accustomed to solitary dinners, business, meetings that stretched into the early hours, and the deafening silence of his penthouse in Beacon Hill. Widowed for 10 years, since losing Rebecca in an accident that still haunted him, Michael had built walls around his heart, walls as high as the skyscrapers his construction company erected throughout the city. That Tuesday in July, as light rain tapped against the restaurant windows, something bothered him more than usual. Perhaps it was the date, July 25th, Rebecca's birthday, or perhaps it was simply the weariness of a life that had become too mechanical. He glanced at the Rolex on his wrist, 10:15 p.m. Another night he would spend awake, navigating between spreadsheets and architectural designs. That's when she appeared. A young woman of no more than 25 approached the table with hesitant steps. Her brown hair was damp from the rain, and she held in her arms an infant of just a few months, wrapped in a blanket that had clearly seen better days. Her green eyes shone with a mixture of determination and silent desperation. "Excuse me, sir," she said, her voice trembling but firm. "I know this might seem strange, but could you give me the leftovers from your plate?" Michael looked up, surprised. In 10 years of frequenting this restaurant, he had never witnessed such a scene. The security guards were already moving discreetly toward the table, but he raised his hand, signaling them to stop. "I'm not asking for money," she continued, as if reading his thoughts. "Just the food, please." There was something in that voice, in those eyes, that cut through all the defenses Michael had built over the years. It wasn't the desperate plea of someone who had lost their dignity. It was the firm request of a mother who would do anything to feed her child. "Sit down," he said, pulling out the chair next to his. The young woman hesitated for a moment, looking nervously at the other restaurant patrons who were beginning to cast curious and judgmental glances. The baby in her arms started to whimper softly. I can't. I'm not dressed appropriately for a place like this." Michael observed her clothes, faded jeans, a simple cotton blouse, and worn-out sneakers. Then he looked at his own attire. $3,000 Italian suit, genuine leather shoes, silk tie. For a moment he felt ridiculous. "Nonsense," he said, standing up and pulling out the chair. "Please, sit down." She sat down carefully, adjusting the baby in her lap. Michael motioned to the waiter, who approached with his usual deference. "Bring the full menu," he ordered, "and prepare the best children's meal you have." "No, sir, I can't accept that," the young woman protested. "I just wanted—" "What's your name?" Michael interrupted, his voice softer. Amy Parker." "And him?" he asked, pointing to the baby. "Nathan, he's 6 months old." Michael felt a tightness in his chest. 6 months. The same age his son would have been if Rebecca hadn't lost the baby in the accident. He pushed away the dark thought and focused on the mother and child before him. "Well, Amy, my name is Michael, and I insist that you dine with us tonight." The waiter brought the menu, and Michael noticed how Amy's eyes widened when she saw the prices. She flipped through the pages carefully, as if afraid of damaging the paper. "You can order whatever you want," he said gently. Maybe just a soup. And if they have milk for Nathan." Michael sighed. There was something deeply touching about the way she tried to maintain her dignity, even in adversity. He decided to make the decision for her. "Bring the shrimp risotto, the grilled salmon, the arugula salad, and the special mashed potatoes for children," he told the waiter, "and a bottle of warm milk." While they waited for the food, Michael observed Amy interact with the baby. She whispered affectionate words, kissed his forehead, and made small noises that made him smile. It was impossible not to notice the unconditional love that radiated from every gesture. "May I ask, how did you end up here?" Amy lowered her eyes, embarrassed. "It's a long story. I have time." She hesitated, then began speaking in a low voice. "I lived in Providence with my mother. When I found out I was pregnant, she kicked me out of the house, said I had dishonored the family." Michael felt anger rise in his chest, but kept his expression neutral. "Nathan's father disappeared when he heard about the pregnancy. I came to Boston thinking it would be easier to find work, but without a college degree, without references," she shrugged. "I spent my last savings on milk and diapers today. We hadn't eaten anything since yesterday morning." The food arrived, and Michael watched fascinated as Amy first fed Nathan with the bottle, humming a lullaby softly before even touching her own meal. When she finally began to eat, she did so with a natural elegance that contrasted with her precarious situation. "Where are you staying?" Amy chewed slowly before answering. "We have an old car. I managed to buy it for $500 from a scrapyard. It doesn't run very well, but it protects us from the rain." The simplicity of the answer hit Michael like a punch to the stomach. A mother and her baby living in a car, struggling to survive in a hostile city. He had spent his entire life surrounded by luxury, complaining about problems that now seemed insignificant. "Amy," he said, choosing his words carefully, "I'd like to help you." She stopped eating and stared at him with suspicion. "Why?" Was a fair question. Michael tried to find an answer that made sense both to her and to himself. Because sometimes life puts us exactly where we need to be. And I have the feeling that our meeting wasn't accidental. You don't know. You don't know anything about me. I know you're a dedicated mother. I know you have dignity and courage. I know you're doing everything you can for your son." Michael leaned forward. "And I know how to recognize a good person when I see one." Amy lowered her eyes again, fighting against tears that threatened to overflow. "I'm not a gold digger. Mr. Michael, I don't want your charity. I'm not offering charity, I'm offering help. There's a difference." The restaurant had emptied almost completely. Only a few tables were still occupied, and the waiters were beginning to collect the chairs. In preparation for closing, Nathan had fallen asleep in Amy's arms, making small, satisfied noises. "Where is your car?" asked Michael. "In the parking lot of the mall nearby. The security guard lets me stay there during the night, as long as I leave early in the morning." Michael signaled for the waiter and asked for the bill. While waiting, he observed Amy cradling Nathan with careful movements full of love. There was something in that scene that transported him to another time, when he dreamed of having a family, when he believed that life had a greater purpose than accumulating wealth. "I'll take you to your car," he said when they finished eating. "You don't need to, Mr. Michael. You've already done more than enough for us tonight." "I insist." The path to the parking lot was made in silence. The rain had stopped, but the air was still damp and cold. Michael offered his coat to Amy, but she politely refused. When they reached the car, a blue Corsa over 15 years, old with peeling paint and foggy windows, Michael felt his heart tighten. "This is your home?" Amy opened the back door, revealing an improvised mattress made of folded blankets, some clothes in plastic bags, and clean bottles organized in a cardboard box. "It's temporary," she said, carefully laying Nathan on the mattress, "until I can get a job and save money to rent a room." Michael observed how she efficiently organized the space, transforming the back seat of an old car into a cozy nursery. There was something deeply touching about that silent determination. "Amy, I have a proposal for you." She turned, alert. "Work for me in one of my companies. I can arrange something in the administrative sector, nothing too complicated. In exchange, I can help with temporary housing until you get stabilized." "Why would you do this for a stranger?" Michael looked at Nathan, who slept peacefully, unaware of the challenges surrounding him. He thought of Rebecca, of all the dreams they had shared that vanished on a rainy night 10 years ago. He thought of the empty life he had built since then, full of professional success but devoid of any real meaning. because maybe you're not the only ones who need help tonight." Amy studied his face for a long moment, looking for signs of falsehood or bad intentions. Apparently satisfied with what she saw, she nodded slowly. "I accept the work, but about the housing, I need to think." "Of course." Michael took a card from his pocket and wrote his personal number on the back. "Call me tomorrow. We can talk more about the details." Amy took the card carefully, as if it was something precious. "Thank you, Mr. Michael, for everything. I don't know how to repay you." "You don't need to repay anything, just take good care of both of you." Michael walked away, but before reaching his own car, he turned once more. Through the foggy back window, he could see Amy's silhouette, adjusting the blankets, preparing for another uncomfortable night. Something inside him stirred, a mixture of compassion and an emotion he couldn't completely identify. As he drove back home, Michael couldn't get the image of Nathan sleeping, peacefully in his mother's arms out of his mind, or the way Amy's eyes sparkled when she talked about her son. It had been years since he had felt so alive. It had been years since he felt that his actions could really matter to someone. Upon arriving at the penthouse, instead of going straight to his office, as he always did, Michael poured himself a whiskey and settled into the armchair in front of the window overlooking the city. Down below, millions of people lived their lives, faced their challenges, loved, lost, started over. For 10 years, he had isolated himself from all that humanity, focusing only on numbers, contracts, and profits. But tonight, something had changed. A young mother and her baby had crossed his path, and Michael felt as if he were waking from a long sleep. Perhaps it was too late to recover everything he had lost with Rebecca, but perhaps it wasn't too late to find a new purpose, a new way of living that wasn't just about surviving. He picked up the phone and dialed his personal assistant. "Robert, it's me. I need you to prepare an employment contract tomorrow morning and look for apartments to rent in the Cambridge area. Something simple but safe, with 2 bedrooms. Of course, Mr. Bennett. May I ask for whom?" Michael looked once more at the city below, thinking of 2 people who at that moment were sleeping uncomfortably in an old car, but who had awakened something in him that he thought was dead forever. For a family that deserves a second chance. The shrill sound of the alarm echoed through the penthouse at 6 in the morning, but Michael had already been awake for an hour, watching the sunrise through the panoramic windows. For the first time in years, he had slept only 3 hours and didn't feel tired. On the contrary, a strange energy consumed him, as if something important was about to happen. He showered quickly, and instead of his usual dark suit, chose a light blue dress shirt and cotton pants, something more accessible, less intimidating. While having coffee, he couldn't stop thinking about Amy and Nathan. Had they spent a good night? Was the baby cold? Had Amy managed to sleep? At 7:30 the phone rang. It was Robert, his assistant. "Good morning, Mr. Bennett. I prepared the documents you requested and found 3 apartments in Cambridge, all furnished, in buildings with good security." "Great. Schedule visits for today, and Robert, be discreet about this, please." "Of course, sir. May I ask when the person will start working?" Michael hesitated. He hadn't even properly discussed the job with Amy. Everything had happened so quickly the night before. "First, I need to confirm some details. I'll keep you informed." He hung up the phone and stared at the business card he had given to Amy. Would it be better to wait for her to call, or should he look for her? The sense of urgency was strange, as if every minute that passed was a lost opportunity. Meanwhile, 15 kilometers away, Amy was waking up to Nathan crying. The baby had had a restless night, waking up several times from cold. She picked him up and checked his diaper, then prepared a bottle with mineral water she had gotten from a gas station. The morning was cold and damp. Inside the car, their breaths formed a thin layer of vapor on the windows. Amy looked at Michael's card in the faint light coming through the windshield. Was it real? A rich man offering employment and help to a complete stranger? She had learned to distrust free kindness. In the 6 months since Nathan was born, she had found many more people willing to judge than to help. But there was something in Michael's eyes, a deep sadness that she recognized as her own, that made her believe in his sincerity. Nathan finished the bottle and smiled at her, that toothless smile that melted her heart every day. For him, she would be capable of anything. For him, perhaps it was worth risking trusting once more. She picked up the prepaid cell phone and dialed the number on the card. Michael answered on the first ring. "Hello, Mr. Michael, it's Amy." "Amy, good morning. How did you two spend the night?" The genuine concern in his voice surprised her. "Well, thank you. Sir, about last night. Were you serious about the job?" "Completely serious. In fact, I've already prepared some documents. Can we meet to talk more?" Amy looked at her own wrinkled clothes, at Nathan who needed a bath, at the car that was her only protection against the world. I don't have a way to get properly dressed for a meeting." "Don't worry about that. How about meeting in a neutral location? I know a very good bakery in Cambridge. Informal family environment." An hour later, Amy was pushing a borrowed baby stroller from a parking lot neighbor toward the bakery. She had managed to give Nathan a quick bath using water from a public faucet and change his clothes for others slightly less wrinkled. Michael was already there, sitting at a corner table with a stack of papers in front of him. He stood up as soon as he saw her, and Amy noticed how some people looked curiously at the scene, an obviously successful man receiving a young mother with a baby. "Amy, I'm glad you came." He kissed her cheek politely and caressed Nathan's head. "How is he today?" "Better. He slept a little more after the sun came up." Michael pulled out a chair for her and helped position the stroller. He ordered coffee with milk and sugar bread for Amy and orange juice. "So, about the job," he began. "Organizing the papers. I have a construction company and a real estate development firm. I need someone to organize documents, handle basic phone service, that sort of thing. Nothing too complicated, but it requires reliability and attention to detail." Amy listened, attentively rocking Nathan, who had started to become restless. "I don't have experience in an office, Mr. Michael. I only worked in a store and restaurant before." "Before Nathan was born?" She nodded. "My mother said I had thrown my life away, that I would never achieve anything as a single mother." Michael felt anger growing in his chest again. How could a mother say that to her own daughter? "Your mother is wrong. Completely wrong." He leaned forward. "Amy, you have something that can't be learned in college. Determination, responsibility, and genuine love. The rest we can teach." Amy's eyes filled with tears. It had been so long since she had heard words of encouragement. "The salary would be $2,500 to start, with meal vouchers and health insurance, and I'd like to help with housing until you get established." $2,500. Amy almost choked on her coffee. It was more than she had earned in any previous job. It's the standard salary for the position, nothing extraordinary. For Michael, perhaps it wasn't extraordinary. For Amy, it was the difference between surviving and really living. About the housing, she hesitated. "I don't want to seem distrustful, but I need to understand what you expect in return." Michael looked at her directly. "I expect you to be a dedicated and honest employee. Nothing more." "Amy, I know how this must sound strange. So a rich man offering help to a stranger. But the truth is that for a long time I haven't done anything that really matters. Helping you gives me a purpose I haven't felt in years." There was a vulnerability in his voice that touched Amy's heart. Perhaps he also needed saving, just in a different way. "Can I see the apartments you found?" Michael smiled, the first genuine smile he had given in months. "Of course, we can go now, if you want." The first apartment was on the third floor of a small building, with a doorman and simple recreational area. It had 2 bedrooms, living room, American kitchen, and a small balcony. It was furnished with the basics: bed, sofa, table, refrigerator. Amy walked through the rooms in silence, touching the walls, as if she couldn't believe it could be real. Nathan, in the stroller, looked curiously at the new environment. "What do you think?" asked Michael. "It's beautiful," she whispered. "But Mr. Michael, how much does a place like this cost?" $1,200 a month, including condo fees." Amy quickly did the math. With the salary he offered, she would have more than 1,000. Dollars a month left for food, clothes, and Nathan's needs. It was a completely different life than she had imagined for them. I can pay for it. With the salary you offered, I can pay. So is it decided? Amy picked up Nathan and walked to the balcony. From there, she could see a small park where children played under their mother's supervision. She imagined Nathan there in a few years, running, laughing, making friends. "Can I ask you something, Mr. Michael?" "Of course." "Why me? Why us? You could help any person, any family. Why choose two people you barely know?" Michael approached the balcony and stood beside her, watching the children in the park. "Do you remember what you asked last night? If our meeting was accidental?" "I remember. I lost my wife 10 years ago. Rebecca. She was 6 months pregnant when she passed away." His voice grew lower. "Since then, I closed myself off from the world. I built a safe, predictable, but empty life. Last night when I saw you with Nathan, when I saw the love that exists between you, it was as if I woke up from a very long sleep." Amy felt tears running down her face. "I'm sorry for your loss. I'm sorry for yours too, for the way your family treated you, for the loneliness you faced." Michael turned to her. "Perhaps we can help each other rebuild what we've lost." Nathan began to babble, extending his little hands toward Michael. Without hesitation, he took the baby in his arms, and Nathan immediately snuggled against his chest. "I think he likes you," said Amy, smiling through the tears. "He's special. You both are." At that moment, standing on the balcony of the apartment, with Nathan in Michael's arms and the afternoon sun coming through the window, Amy felt something she hadn't experienced in months: hope. Not just the hope of surviving another day, but the hope of really building a dignified life for her son. "I accept," she said, "the job, the apartment, everything, but with one condition." "Which is?" "I want to pay the rent completely. No discount, no favoritism. I want this to be an honest working relationship, not charity." Michael studied her determined face and nodded. "Agreed, but I maintain the right to give presents to Nathan on his birthday and Christmas." "That's negotiable," she said finally, smiling genuinely for the first time in months. They returned to the living room, where Michael spread the papers on the coffee table. "Employment contract, documents for the lease, health insurance forms. Could you start on Monday?" "Of course, but what about Nathan? I can't leave him alone." "I've already thought about that. There's an excellent daycare 2 blocks from the office. I can help with the monthly fee until you're completely organized." Amy hesitated. It was too much generosity all at once. "Mr. Michael?" "Amy, please, just call me Michael." "Michael, I don't know how to thank you for all this. But I promise I won't disappoint you. I'll work hard. I'll be the best employee I can be." "I know you will." Michael took Nathan back in his arms. "And who knows, with time, maybe you can teach me to be a better person too." As they signed the papers, Amy couldn't stop thinking about the turnaround her life had taken in less than 24 hours. Yesterday she was asking for leftovers. Today she had a job, a home, and a real future to offer her son. But more than that, she had found someone who believed in her when she herself had stopped believing. Michael didn't see her as a single mother without prospects. He saw her as a capable person, deserving of respect and opportunities. "When can I move in?" she asked. "Today, if you want. I can send my driver to pick up your things." Amy laughed, remembering what her things were. Some clothes in plastic bags and baby belongings organized in the trunk of the old Corsa. It won't be difficult to transport. 2 hours later, Michael watched Amy organize the apartment with impressive efficiency. She had transformed the smaller bedroom into a cozy nursery for Nathan, and already had plans for small improvements that would make the space even more welcoming. "I need to go now," he said. "But any question, call me. You have my number." "Michael, thank you for everything. I know this isn't normal, that people like you don't usually do this for people like me. But I promise I'll honor your trust." Michael stopped at the door and turned to her. Amy was holding Nathan, who was playing with her hair, and for the first time she seemed relaxed, at peace. "Amy, People like me spend their entire lives looking for something that gives meaning to their achievements. People like you remind me of what that meaning is. After he left, Amy sat on the new sofa with Nathan in her lap and looked around the apartment. For the first time in months, they had a real home. For the first time since she discovered her pregnancy, she felt able to dream about the future. But as she rocked Nathan to sleep in his new room, a small voice in the back of her mind whispered words of caution. Was it all too good to be true? Was there something more behind Michael's generosity? She pushed away the negative thoughts. For today, it was enough to be grateful for the first night in months that they would spend warm, safe, and with hope in their hearts. Monday arrived with a mixture of nervousness and expectation for Amy. She had woken up at 5 in the morning, much earlier than necessary, meticulously preparing everything for her first day of work. Nathan was radiant in his new outfit, a little blue romper she had bought on Sunday with part of the money Michael had advanced. The Little Dreams daycare was exactly as Michael had described, clean, organized, and with caring professionals. Amy spoke at length with the coordinator, Mrs. Francis, a 60-year-old lady with kind eyes and 3 decades of experience caring for children. "You can relax, dear," said Francis, taking Nathan in her arms. "He'll adapt quickly. Children this age are very resilient." Nathan, as if wanting to prove the coordinator's point, immediately smiled at her and began playing with the colorful necklace she wore. Amy felt her heart tighten with the first separation, but knew it was necessary. Any problem, you call me, okay?" "Of course, Mom, but you'll see that it won't be necessary." The Bennett Development's office was in an elegant commercial building in the financial district. Amy presented herself at the reception at 8 o'clock sharp, wearing a simple business outfit she had bought on Saturday, her first clothing purchase in more than a year. "Amy Parker," asked the receptionist, an impeccably groomed blonde woman, "Mr. Bennett is waiting for you." Walking through the corridors, Amy observed the walls decorated with photos of the company's developments. Elegant residential buildings, imposing commercial complexes, luxury homes. It was a completely different world from what she knew. Michael received her in a meeting room, accompanied by a middle-aged woman dressed formally. "Amy, this is Helen, our human resources manager. She'll guide you on the company's procedures." Helen greeted Amy with a professional smile, but her eyes evaluated her critically. It was evident that she was curious about the circumstances of the hiring. "Good morning, Amy. Michael told me you'll be working in the administrative sector. Do you have previous office experience?" "Not specifically," Amy answered honestly, "but I'm organized and I learn quickly." Helen exchanged a quick look with Michael. "All right, we'll start with simple tasks: filing, answering phones, organizing documents. Vera, our administrative assistant, will train you." Throughout the morning, Amy dedicated herself intensely to the training. Vera, a friendly 50-year-old lady, was patient in explaining the company's systems, filing procedures, and customer service standards. "You're smart," Vera commented during the coffee break. "You're picking everything up very quickly." "Thank you, I'm trying to do my best." "Can I ask you a personal question?" Vera lowered her voice. "How did you meet Mr. Bennett? It's unusual for him to hire someone without experience directly." Amy hesitated. How to explain the situation without sounding like she was receiving special favor? "We met by chance. He learned about my situation and decided to give me an opportunity." Vera nodded, but Amy realized that the explanation hadn't completely satisfied her curiosity. During lunch, Michael appeared at her desk. "How's the first day going?" "Great. Vera is very patient and I'm enjoying the work." "And Nathan, how was it leaving him at daycare?" "Difficult," Amy admitted, "but I know it's best for him." Michael smiled. "Would you like to have lunch with me? We can pick up Nathan at daycare and all have lunch together. I know a family restaurant near there." The suggestion caught Amy by surprise. "Michael, don't you think that might seem inappropriate? An employee having lunch with the boss? Why would it be inappropriate? We're friends, aren't we?" Amy looked around the office. Some employees were discreetly observing the conversation, and she could imagine what they were thinking. Maybe it's better if we keep things professional here at work. Michael seemed slightly disappointed, but nodded. "Of course, you're right. But anything you need, don't hesitate to ask me. The afternoon passed quickly. Amy focused on organizing a file of old contracts, work that required attention to detail and patience. She was so absorbed in the task that she didn't notice when Helen approached. "Amy, can I talk to you for a minute?" They went to a private room. Helen closed the door and sat across from Amy with a serious expression. "I need to be direct with you. Michael is a good man, but sometimes his generosity can be misinterpreted." "I don't understand." "You're a beautiful young woman, a single mother in a vulnerable situation. Michael is a rich and lonely man. People might make incorrect assumptions about the nature of your relationship." Amy felt her face heat up. "There's nothing inappropriate between us, if that's what you're implying." "I believe you. But not everyone will believe. My advice is maintain personal distance from him. Do your job well, be professional, but don't give room for gossip." "May I ask why you're telling me this?" Helen sighed. "Because Michael is like a brother to me. I've worked with him for 15 years. I saw how he suffered when he lost Rebecca, saw how he closed himself off from the world. Recently, he seemed more alive. And I'm afraid that you might be the reason." "And that's bad?" "It could be if you two aren't on the same page about what you want from this relationship. Michael might be seeing in you and your son a way to fill the void that Rebecca left. You might be seeing in him a security you've never had. Neither of these motivations is a solid basis for any kind of relationship." Amy was silent, processing Helen's words. There was truth in them, and that bothered her. "Thank you for the advice. I'll think about what you said." "Don't take me wrong, Amy. You seem to be a good person, and I wish you success. I just want both of you to have your feet on the ground." The rest of the afternoon passed in a different atmosphere. Amy found herself analyzing every interaction with Michael, every gesture, every word. When he passed by her desk and asked how her day had been, she responded more formally than usual. At 6 o'clock, she went to pick up Nathan at the daycare. The baby was radiant, obviously having had fun during the day. Francis reassured her, saying that he had adapted perfectly, had played with other children, and eaten well. "He's a sweetheart," said Francis. "Very sociable and cheerful. You have a special son." On the way home, Amy reflected on the first day. The work had been rewarding, the people were kind, and she felt capable of growing professionally there. But Helen's words echoed in her mind. Was it true that Michael was projecting onto her and Nathan the family he had lost? And was she becoming attached to him more for the security he represented than for who he really was? In the apartment, while preparing a simple dinner, pasta with tomato sauce and salad, Amy tried to organize her feelings. She couldn't deny that she felt immense gratitude toward Michael. More than that, she felt comfortable in his presence, in a way she hadn't experienced in a long time. But could gratitude be confused with affection? Could security be confused with love? Nathan, playing on the living room rug with his new toys, was contentedly babbling. At least he was clearly happy with the changes in their lives. The phone rang, interrupting her thoughts. "Hello?" "Amy? It's Michael. How was the first day?" "Very good, thank you for asking." "You sound distant. Did something happen?" Amy hesitated. "Michael, can I ask you a question?" "Of course." "Why are you really doing all this for me and for Nathan?" There was silence on the other end of the line for a moment. "We've already talked about this. You and Nathan gave me a purpose that I didn't have for years." "But you're not trying to replace Rebecca and the child you lost through us, are you?" The silence was longer this time. "Amy, where did this question come from?" "Someone suggested that maybe your motivations weren't as simple as they appear." "Someone? Who? Does that matter?" "The question is still valid." Michael sighed deeply. "Amy, I won't lie by saying that you haven't awakened feelings in me that had been dormant for years. But I'm not trying to replace anyone. You are unique, special for who you are, not for who you represent." "Are you sure about that?" "I am. But I can understand your concern. Maybe it's better if we maintain a certain professional distance while you get established." "I don't want you to feel pressured or uncomfortable." Maybe that really is best. All right, but Amy, I want you to know that my offer of help and friendship remains valid regardless of anything. After they hung up, Amy stared at the phone for a long time. Part of her felt relieved for having established clear boundaries. Another part felt as if she had lost something important. Nathan crawled to her and pulled himself up to stand, supporting himself on her legs. His eyes sparkled with unconditional love and absolute trust. "It's just the two of us again, my love," she whispered, picking him up, "at least for now." But as she rocked Nathan to sleep, singing the same lullaby she had sung in the car that first night, Amy couldn't ignore the feeling that something had changed. The conversation with Michael had created a distance that didn't exist before, and she wasn't sure if that was what she really wanted. In fact, for the first time in months, she had begun to imagine what it would be like to have not only financial security, but also adult companionship, someone with whom to share the joys and challenges of raising Nathan. Had she made a mistake by creating this distance? Or had she done the right thing to protect herself and her son from a possible disappointment? Only time would tell. For now, she would focus on being the best employee possible and the best mother she could be. The rest could wait. 3. Weeks passed since the phone conversation that had created an invisible barrier between Michael and Amy. At the office, they maintained impeccable professional cordiality. He asked about her progress at work. She responded with efficiency and politeness, but the spontaneity, the genuine smiles, and the warm conversations had disappeared. Amy stood out at work. Her dedication and attention to detail impressed all her colleagues. Vera frequently praised her organization, and even Helen had admitted that the hiring was proving to be right. But behind the professional competence, Amy carried a weight in her heart that she couldn't fully explain. Nathan, on the other hand, was flourishing. At the daycare, he had become the caregiver's favorite and was already rehearsing his first attempts to stand on his own. At night, in the cozy apartment, mother and son established a peaceful routine. Bath, dinner, playing on the living room, rug and stories before bed. It was Thursday when everything changed again. Amy was organizing contracts in the archive when Vera approached with a worried expression. "Amy, a package arrived for you at the reception. It's peculiar." Amy went down to the reception, where she found a huge bouquet of red roses, accompanied by an expensive box of chocolates and a card. Her heart raced. Could it be from Michael? But when she read the card, the blood froze in her veins. "To my daughter and grandson, I hope we can talk. With love, Mum." Amy's hands trembled as she held the card. Her mother. After almost 8 months of silence, after having kicked her out of the house pregnant and helpless, now she appeared. "Is everything okay?" asked the receptionist. "You turned pale." I need to step out for a bit. Can you tell Vera I'll be back in half an hour?" Amy practically ran out of the building, needing fresh air. She sat on a bench in the plaza in front and reread the card several times, as if the words could change meaning. How had her mother discovered where she worked? How had she gotten her address? She took out her cell phone and dialed the number she hadn't called in months. "Hello?" Elizabeth Parker's voice was exactly as she remembered. Firm, controlling. "Mom, it's me." "Amy. Daughter, I'm glad you called. Did you receive the flowers? How did you find me? Does that matter? What's important is that I did. Daughter, we need to talk." "About what? About how you kicked me out of the house when I needed support the most? About how you said I had dishonored the family?" "Amy, I know I made mistakes. I was scared, confused. When I found out you were pregnant, I could only think about what people would say, the judgment we would face. And now? What changed?" There was a long pause. I saw you on television, daughter." Amy frowned. "On television?" "A news program did a report about a businessman who is helping needy families. They showed you leaving a hospital. You, Nathan, and this man, Michael Bennett. They said he was funding your medical treatment." Amy's stomach churned. "What report? When?" "Last week. They talked about social responsibility, about businessmen who make a difference. Amy, daughter, you did it. You got a rich man to take care of you. The nausea Amy felt was instant and overwhelming. Mom, it's not what you're thinking. Of course it is. You were smart, daughter. You used your beauty and the baby to win over a millionaire. I always knew you were intelligent. Stop! Amy shouted, causing some people in the plaza to turn and look at her. It's not like that, Mum. Michael offered me a job, nothing more. Oh, daughter, you don't need to pretend with me. I understand. You did what you had to do to survive. And now that you're established, we can be a family again. A family? Where were you when Nathan was born? When we spent nights hungry and cold? I was wrong. I've already admitted that. But now I can help. I can come to Boston, take care of my grandson while you work. We can live together again. The idea of having her mother around, trying to control her life again, made Amy feel claustrophobic. No, Mum, I don't want that. Amy, be reasonable. A child needs his grandmother, and you need help to keep this man interested. Rich men are fickle, daughter. You need to be smart to hold on to him. I'm not trying to hold on to anyone. Michael is my boss, just that. Of course not. No boss pays for private hospital for an employee. No boss appears in the newspaper with an employee. Amy, you've achieved something big. Don't let it slip away because of foolish pride. Amy hung up the phone with trembling hands. Her mother's distorted interpretation of the situation with Michael made her nauseous. Is that what people thought? That she had seduced Michael to get a better life? She returned to the office in a state of shock. Vera immediately noticed that something was wrong. Did something happen? You look terrible. Vera, can I ask you something? Do people here at the office, do they comment anything about me and Mr. Bennett? Vera hesitated. Why are you asking that? Please be honest with me. Well, there are some comments. Nothing malicious, but people find it strange how you were hired, his interest in you and your son. Some think that there's something more between you. And you? What do you think? I think that Mr. Bennett is a good man who wanted to help a mother in difficulties. But Amy, you know how people are. They always look for more interesting explanations for acts of kindness. The rest of the day passed like a blur. Amy managed to focus on work, but her mind wouldn't stop spinning. Her mother's call had stirred up all her insecurities. What if people really thought she had seduced Michael? What if he himself started to think that? At 6 o'clock, she was leaving the building when she met Michael in the elevator. Amy, how was your day? Good, thank you. They descended in silence, but Michael seemed to want to say something. Amy, can I talk to you for a minute? It's about work. They moved to a corner of the lobby. I received a call today from a reporter. It seems that someone gave information about our situation to the press. They wanted to do a story about corporate social responsibility. Amy's heart nearly stopped. And what did you say? That there was no story at all. That you are an employee like any other, and that our personal lives are not public business. But Amy, do you have any idea who might have leaked this information? Amy thought about her mother, about the report she had mentioned. It could have been anyone who saw us together. Michael studied her face. Is there something you're not telling me? Amy wanted to tell him about her mother's call, about the flowers, about the fears that consumed her, but Helen's words echoed in her mind. Maintain professional distance. No, there's nothing. Are you sure? You seem disturbed. I'm fine, just worried about what people might think. Michael took a step closer. Amy, I don't care what people think, I never have, but if this is bothering you, it is. It is bothering me. Then what do you want me to do? Amy looked at him. Really looked. She saw the genuine concern in his eyes, the way he leaned slightly toward her, as if he wanted to protect her from anything that might be hurting her. For a moment, she wanted to tell him everything, to lean on him as she had done that first night. But then she remembered her mother's words, the office gossip, the television report. I want us to keep things strictly professional, no lunches. Together, no personal conversations, nothing that could be misinterpreted. Michael looked as if he had been punched. Is that what you really want? It's what needs to be done. Why do I have the impression that there's something more going on here? Something you're not telling me. Michael, please, let's just keep things simple, okay? He observed her for a long moment, then nodded slowly. If that's what you want. But Amy, I want you to know that if you need anything, anything at all, you can still count on me, regardless of everything else. Thank you. They separated in the parking lot, and Amy felt as if she had just cut a rope that kept her connected to something important. But it was the right thing to do, wasn't it? It was the way to protect herself and Nathan from future complications. Funny, the daycare, Nathan greeted her with his usual radiant smile. Francis commented that he had spent the day asking for Daddy Michael, something the caregivers had interpreted from his attempts to pronounce the name. He's really become attached to Mr. Bennett, Francis commented. It's rare to see such a young child create this kind of bond. On the way home, Amy reflected on the comment. Nathan had indeed become attached to Michael. The few times they had met in recent weeks, the baby became visibly excited, extended his little arms to him, and cried when he left. What if she were depriving Nathan of a positive father figure because of her own fears? What if she were punishing Michael for a crime he hadn't committed? At home, while preparing dinner, the phone rang again. It was her mother. Amy, don't hang up. I need to talk to you. Mom, I already said. I bought a ticket to Boston. I arrive on Saturday. Amy almost dropped the pot. What? No, Mom, I didn't authorize that. I'm your mother and Nathan's grandmother. I don't need authorization to see my family. You can't just show up here and think that... Amy, you need me. You may not admit it, but you do, and I need to meet my grandson. I made a mistake kicking you out, but I won't make the mistake of staying away from Nathan. The line went dead. Amy stared at the phone with a mixture of anger and panic. Her mother coming to Boston meant complications she wasn't prepared to face. It meant confronting a painful past. And worse, it meant that her carefully reconstructed life was about to be turned upside down once again. Nathan crawled to her and pulled himself up to stand, holding onto her legs. He looked at her with those trusting eyes, as if he knew she would always find a way to protect him. What are we going to do now, my love? She whispered, picking him up. For the first time in weeks, Amy felt like calling Michael, telling him everything and asking for advice, but she had created a distance between them, had insisted on keeping things professional. How could she now run to him at the first sign of trouble? She couldn't. She would have to face this alone, as she had always done. But as she rocked Nathan to sleep, a single tear rolled down her face. For the first time since arriving in Boston, she felt truly alone again. Saturday arrived, loaded with anxiety. Amy had spent the previous night without sleeping, alternating between obsessively organizing the apartment and mentally rehearsing the conversations she would have with her mother. Nathan seemed to sense her tension and was fussier than usual, crying for inexplicable reasons and refusing to play by himself. At 2 in the afternoon, the doorbell rang. Amy took a deep breath, adjusted Nathan in her arms, and went to answer. When she opened the door, she saw Elizabeth Parker standing in the hallway, with 2 large suitcases and an expression that mixed determination and nervousness. At 52, Elizabeth was still a beautiful woman, although the lines around her eyes revealed years of hard work and worries. Her brown hair was impeccably arranged, and she wore her best dress, the same one she reserved for weddings and baptisms in Providence. "Daughter," she said, her eyes immediately fixing on Nathan. "Oh my God, how he's grown." Nathan hid in Amy's neck, intimidated by the stranger's presence. Elizabeth extended her arms, expecting the grandson to come to her, but the baby just watched her with cautious curiosity. "Come in," said Amy, moving away from the door. Elizabeth entered the apartment and made a quick visual inspection, her eyes evaluating each piece of furniture, each detail. Amy knew exactly what she was doing, calculating the value of everything, trying to understand her daughter's standard of living. "It's very nice here," Elizabeth commented, sitting on the sofa. "A place like this must be expensive." "I pay my rent with my salary," Amy responded, more defensively than she intended. "Of course, daughter, I didn't doubt that." Elizabeth smiled, but there was something calculating in her expression. "Can you show me my grandson now?" Amy hesitated, then sat in the armchair next to the sofa, keeping Nathan in her lap. "Nathan, this is your grandmother, Grandma Elizabeth." Nathan looked at his grandmother with renewed interest. Elizabeth made funny faces and soft noises, trying to win him over. Gradually, the baby began to smile and babble back. "He's beautiful, Amy. He looks like you when you were a baby." Elizabeth's voice became softer, genuinely emotional. "May I hold him?" Reluctantly, Amy handed Nathan to her mother. Elizabeth received him carefully, her eyes filling with tears. "My little grandson. Grandma missed you so much, even without knowing you." For a moment, Amy saw her mother not as the controlling woman who had kicked her out of the house, but as a grandmother moved by meeting her grandson for the first time. Nathan, always sociable, quickly got used to Elizabeth and began playing with her earrings. "Mum," said Amy after a few minutes, "we need to talk." "Of course, daughter, but first tell me everything. How did you get this apartment? What's it like working for this Michael Bennett?" "It's a good job. I work in the administrative sector of his company." "And him? What's he like as a person?" Amy felt uncomfortable with the direction of the conversation. "He's a good boss, fair, respectful." "Amy, you can trust me. There's nothing wrong with using your attributes to improve your life. Rich men do it all the time, use their money to get beautiful women. Why can't we do the opposite?" "Mom, stop. It's not like that. Michael helped me because he's a good person, not because I'm offering something in return." Elizabeth laughed. "Daughter, I wasn't born yesterday. Men don't do anything for nothing, especially rich men. He wants something from you." "You're wrong." "Am I? Then why doesn't he help other single mothers? Why specifically you?" The question hit Amy hard because it was exactly the same doubt that tormented her on sleepless nights. Because fate put our situations in his path at that moment. "Fate?" Elizabeth shook her head. "Amy, you've always been very romantic. In real life, things don't work that way. Men like Michael Bennett calculate every move." Nathan began to get restless, and Elizabeth returned him to Amy. The baby immediately calmed down in his mother's arms. "Where will I sleep?" asked Elizabeth. "You can stay in my room. I'll sleep on the sofa." "Nonsense. I can sleep on the sofa for a few nights until we organize something better." "Mom, a few nights? How long do you plan to stay?" "As long as necessary. Amy, you need me. Nathan needs his grandmother, and I need to make up for lost time. I can't support 2 people with my salary." "Don't worry about that. I have some savings, and I'll look for work here." Elizabeth got up and went to the window. Boston has more opportunities than Providence. Amy felt the walls of the apartment closing in around her. In a matter of minutes, her carefully organized life was being reorganized by her mother. "Mom, I don't know if this is a good idea." "Why?" "Because you're afraid I'll interfere with your plans with Michael." "I don't have plans with Michael." "Then you should. Amy, you have a unique opportunity here. A rich, successful man, clearly interested in you and Nathan. You can't let this slip away because of foolish pride." "And if I say I don't want that? That I want to build my life on my own merit?" "I'd say you're being naive. Amy, you have a son to raise. Nathan deserves the best you can give him. If that means marrying a rich man who can provide security and opportunities for him, then that's what you should do." The doorbell rang, interrupting the discussion. Amy went to answer, expecting it to be a neighbor or delivery person. When she opened the door, she almost fainted from surprise. Michael was standing in the hallway, holding a grocery bag and with an expression of someone who didn't quite know what he was doing there. "Michael! What? How?" "Sorry to show up like this without warning. I was at the market and remembered that you had mentioned Nathan was running out of his baby food. I bought some." He held up the bag. "But if it's a bad time—" "No, it's not. Please, come in." Michael entered the apartment and immediately noticed Elizabeth's presence, who had risen from the sofa and was observing him with evident interest. "Michael, this is my mother, Elizabeth Parker." "Mom, this is Michael Bennett." Elizabeth approached with a smile that Amy knew well, the smile she used when she wanted to make a good impression. "Mr. Bennet, what a pleasure to finally meet you. I've heard so much about you," Michael greeted. Elizabeth politely, but Amy noticed his discomfort with her mother's effusiveness. "Likewise, Mrs. Parker, Amy has told me about you." "I hope good things," laughed Elizabeth. "You know how daughters are, sometimes they hold grudges against their mothers." "Mom," Amy warned, "I came from Providence to meet my grandson and help Amy with him. A child needs family, don't you?" "Think, Mr. Bennet?" "Certainly," responded Michael, looking at Amy as if trying to understand the dynamics of the situation. Nathan, who had been in the crib during the conversation, started to cry. Amy went to get him, but when she returned to the living room, she found her mother and Michael in a conversation that made her freeze. "It's wonderful the interest you have in my daughter and grandson," Elizabeth was saying. "It's not every day we find men so generous and attentive." "Amy is an exceptional employee," Michael responded, clearly uncomfortable. "Ah, more than that, I'm sure. You wouldn't do so much for an ordinary employee. It's evident that there's special affection there." Amy wished the floor would open up and swallow her. Her mother was doing exactly what she feared, creating an awkward situation, implying things that didn't exist. "Mom, Michael brought baby food for Nathan. How kind, wasn't it?" "Very kind," agreed Elizabeth, with a gleam in her eyes that Amy knew and feared. "You behave like a father with Nathan." Michael began, but was interrupted by Nathan who, seeing him, started to babble and extend his little arms in his direction. Michael instinctively extended his arms and took the baby, who immediately snuggled against his chest. The scene was so natural, so affectionate, that for a moment Amy forgot her concerns. "See," said Elizabeth, triumphantly, "he recognizes Daddy." "Mom!" Amy felt her face burning with embarrassment. Michael looked at her, then at Elizabeth, then at Nathan in his arms. "Maybe I should go. I don't want to interrupt family time." "You don't need to go because of me," Elizabeth said quickly. "In fact, how about dining together? I can cook something special. It would be a great opportunity to talk more. Mom, I'm sure Michael has other commitments." "Actually, I don't," said Michael, looking directly at Amy. "But I'll only stay if you want me to stay." Amy found herself in a dilemma. Refusing would seem rude and would confirm to her mother that there were problems between them. Accepting would mean an entire evening of inappropriate insinuations and comments from Elizabeth. "Of course," she finally said. "It will be pleasant." The dinner was exactly the nightmare Amy had anticipated. Elizabeth bombarded Michael with questions about his personal life, his future plans, and his intentions regarding Amy and Nathan. Michael, always polite, responded evasively, but Amy could see his growing discomfort. "You never remarried after you lost your wife?" Elizabeth asked during dessert. "No," Michael answered simply. "It must be lonely. A man like you should have a family, children running around the house, a loving wife." "Mom, how about changing the subject?" Amy interrupted desperately. "Why, daughter? We're just talking." Elizabeth turned to Michael again. "Amy has always been very reserved about feelings, but I see how she looks at you." "Mom!" Michael put his fork on the table. "Mrs. Parker, with all due respect, I think there's a misunderstanding. Here, my relationship with Amy is professional. She is a valuable employee and Nathan is an adorable child. Nothing more than that." Of course," said Elizabeth with a knowing smile. "I understand perfectly. Sometimes it's better to keep things discreet at the beginning." Amy wanted to disappear. The situation had become unbearable. "Michael," she said, standing up, "thank you for dining with us. I know you have a busy day tomorrow." Michael understood the cue and stood up too. "Thank you for dinner, Mrs. Parker. It was enlightening." At the door, he turned to Amy. "Can we talk on Monday at the office?" "Of course." After Michael left, Elizabeth turned to Amy with eyes sparkling with satisfaction. "Daughter, that man is completely in love with you." "Mom, you just mortally embarrassed him. He probably won't even want to see me on Monday." "Nonsense, I just accelerated a process that was already happening. You two were dancing around your feelings for too long." "There are no feelings. How many times do I need to repeat that? Amy, I saw how he looks at you. I saw how he picks up Nathan. That man wants a family, and you are exactly what he needs. And if I don't want that? Elizabeth stopped cleaning the table and faced her daughter. Then you're more foolish than I thought. Amy, opportunities like this don't come twice in life. This man can give Nathan everything I could never give you. Like financial security in exchange for what? Pretending to love someone. Who said it would be pretending? Elizabeth approached her daughter. Amy, you like him. I can see that. And he likes you. Why make this more complicated than it needs to be? Later, after Elizabeth had settled on the sofa and Nathan was sleeping, Amy stood on the balcony, looking at the city. Her mother's words echoed in her mind, mixing with her own doubts and fears. Was it true that Michael felt something for her? And if it were true, what would she do with that information? More importantly, what did she really feel for him? One thing was certain. Her mother's arrival had changed everything again, and on Monday, she would have to face Michael at the office, knowing that he had been exposed to all the dysfunction of her family. Perhaps it was time for an honest conversation between them. Perhaps it was time to stop running from feelings that deep down she knew existed. Or perhaps it was time to establish definitive boundaries before the situation became even more complicated. The problem was that, for the first time since meeting Michael, Amy wasn't sure which of the two options she really wanted to choose. Monday arrived like an impending storm. Amy had spent the entire Sunday mentally rehearsing the conversation she would have with Michael, while her mother made constant comments about lost opportunities and men who don't wait forever. Elizabeth had left early to look for a job, leaving Amy with a mixture of relief and apprehension. At the office, the atmosphere was different. Amy noticed curious looks from colleagues, whispers that stopped when she passed through the corridors. Vera approached her during the morning break with a concerned expression. Amy, can I talk to you? They went to the empty break room. Some photos circulated over the weekend, Vera said hesitantly, of Michael leaving your building Saturday night. Amy's stomach dropped. What kind of photos? Nothing compromising, but people are commenting, especially after that report about you two last week. What report? I didn't see any report. Vera took out her phone and showed her a link. It was a social gossip website with the headline, Millionaire businessman finds love with employee in vulnerable situation. There was a photo of Michael and Amy leaving the hospital with Nathan in her arms, and a more recent one of him entering her building. Amy felt nausea rising in her throat. My God! Amy, I know it's none of my business, but you need to be careful. Helen is furious. She thinks this is harming the company's image. Before Amy could respond, Helen's voice echoed through the break room. Amy Parker, I need to speak with you now. In Helen's office, Amy found not only the HR manager, but also Michael. He was sitting with a somber expression, avoiding her gaze. Sit down, Helen said dryly. We have a problem. Helen placed printouts of various articles on the table. All speculated about the relationship between Michael and Amy, some going so far as to suggest that she had seduced the boss to secure her future. This is getting out of control, said Helen. Clients are calling asking questions. Competitors are using this to question the seriousness of our company. We need to take action. What kind of action? Asked Amy, her voice almost a whisper. Obviously, we need to clarify that there is no inappropriate relationship between you two, Helen responded. And perhaps it would be better if Amy were transferred to another sector or even to another company in the group. No, said Michael firmly, speaking for the first time since Amy had entered the room. Amy is an exemplary employee. We're not going to punish her for malicious press speculation. Michael, be reasonable, said Helen. This is harming all of us. The speculations only exist because there's a grain of truth in them, said Michael, finally looking at Amy. And maybe it's time we stop pretending otherwise. Amy felt the world stop around her. Michael. No, Amy, enough of running from this. He stood up and turned to Helen. You're right about one thing. My relationship with Amy isn't just professional. It never was from the first day. Helen looked as if she was about to have a heart attack. "Michael, you can't be serious." "I'm completely serious." Michael walked to the window. "For months I've been trying to convince myself that it was just gratitude, or nostalgia, or anything else, but the truth is that I fell in love with her and with Nathan." The silence in the room was deafening. Amy felt as if she couldn't breathe. "Michael," she whispered, "you can't say that. Not like this." "Why not?" He turned to her. "Because it's inconvenient, because it complicates things. Amy, do you think I don't know how this looks? A rich man taking advantage of a woman in a vulnerable situation?" "That's not what I—" "Then, what is it? Because for weeks you've been treating me as if I were a threat, as if my presence in your life were a problem to be solved." Tears began to roll down Amy's face. "Because I was afraid." "Afraid of what?" "Afraid that you were trying to transform me into someone else. Afraid that you were seeing in me and Nathan a way to fill the void that Rebecca left. Afraid of falling in love with you and discovering that it was just charity disguised as affection." Michael crossed the room in 2 strides and took her hands. "Amy, look at me." She raised her eyes, meeting his full of an intensity that made her tremble. "You are not Rebecca. Nathan is not the child I lost. You are unique, special, irreplaceable. And what I feel for you has nothing to do with the past. It has to do with the future I want to build." "Michael," Helen tried to interrupt. "Helen, with all due respect, this is none of your business," said Michael, without taking his eyes off Amy. "It's mine and Amy's." "Actually," said Amy, finding courage to speak, "it's mine too, and I also fell in love with you." The confession came out as a whisper, but had the impact of a shout. Michael closed his eyes for a moment, as if absorbing the words. "Then why have you fought so hard against it?" "Because my mother made me see how other people interpret our situation. Because I'm afraid that one day you'll wake up and realize you can have any woman in the world. Why would you stay? With a single mother without higher education." "Because you're the only person who has made me feel alive again in 10 years, said Michael, his voice full of emotion. "Because when I see you with Nathan, I see the kind of mother I dream of for my future children. Because when I talk to you, I feel as if I'm talking to my soulmate." Helen abruptly stood up. "I can't listen to this anymore. You two have completely lost your minds, Michael. You're going to destroy your reputation because of a passion that might not last 6 months. "Helen," said Michael, finally turning to her, "if my reputation can't survive the fact that I've fallen in love with a wonderful woman and an incredible baby, then perhaps it's a reputation not worth keeping. And the company, the business. The company will survive. In fact, it will thrive because for the first time in years, I have a real reason to fight for something bigger than profits and contracts." Helen shook her head and headed for the "Tartant, you're making a huge mistake, but if that's what you want, then deal with the consequences." After Helen left, Michael and Amy were alone in the room. The silence was charged with tension and possibilities. "And now?" asked Amy. "Now we're honest with each other," said Michael. "Amy, I want you in my life, not as an employee, not as a charity project, but as a partner, as the woman I love." "But what if—" "There is no what if." Michael took her face in his hands. "Amy, I'm tired of living in fear. I lost 10 years of my life hiding from the possibility of loving again. I don't want to lose even one more day. Michael, my mother was right about one thing. People will talk. They'll say I'm after your money, that you're being deceived. Let them talk. The only opinions that matter are mine, yours, and one day, Nathan's." Amy smiled through the tears. "He already has an opinion. Every time you appear, he lights up. And you, what's your opinion?" Amy looked into the eyes of the man who had changed her life in so many ways. She saw in them not pity or condescension, but genuine love and respect. She saw a future she had never dared to dream of. "My opinion is that I love you," she said, "and I'm afraid, but I want to try." Michael kissed her, then softly and lovingly, as if sealing a promise. When they separated, both were smiling. "There are still many obstacles," said Amy. "My mother, the gossip, the social differences between us." "We'll face everything together," said Michael. "But first, Let's pick up Nathan from daycare and tell him that officially we have a family now. He won't understand. He doesn't need to understand, he just needs to feel that he's loved, and he already feels that. They left the room hand in hand, ignoring the curious looks from employees. At the reception, they found a well-dressed man waiting. "Mr. Bennett, I'm Richard Miller from Business and Economy newspaper. I'd like to ask some questions about your personal life and how it affects your business." Michael looked at Amy, then at the reporter. "Sure, but it won't be an interview about scandals or speculation. It will be about love, family, and about how sometimes the best things in life come when we least expect them." The reporter seemed surprised. "So you confirm there is a relationship?" "I confirm that I found the woman of my life and that I intend to spend the rest of my days proving that she deserves all the love in the world," said Michael, squeezing Amy's hand. "And you, ma'am?" The reporter turned to Amy. "How do you respond to criticisms that you're taking advantage of the situation?" Amy took a deep breath, found courage in the strength of Michael's hand in hers, and answered, "I respond that true love knows no social classes or financial situations, and that if anyone is taking advantage here, it's me, because I gained not only a wonderful man, but also the opportunity to offer my son the father he deserves." As they left the building to pick up Nathan, Amy felt as if she were walking toward a completely new future. There were still many challenges ahead, difficult conversations with her mother, practical adjustments to make. But for the first time since Nathan was born, she wasn't facing the future alone. She had a partner, a companion, someone who loved her not despite her circumstances, but for who she was as a person. And that, she thought as Michael smiled at her in the passenger seat, made all the difference in the world. 6 months after, the confession in the office, life had transformed in ways Amy never imagined possible. The initial controversy in the press had dissipated when other more scandalous stories took the headlines, and Michael and Amy's relationship had consolidated in a natural and genuine way. Nathan, now 1 year and 2 months old, had taken his first steps in the garden of the house that Michael had bought especially for them, a cozy residence in a family condominium where the baby could play freely and safely. Nathan's first clear word to Michael's emotional pride had been "Daddy," directed straight at him during a Sunday breakfast. Elizabeth, after 3 months of initial resistance to the changes in her daughter's life, had finally found her place in the new family dynamic. She had found a job as a seamstress in a boutique in Brookline and lived in a small but comfortable apartment that Michael had helped her rent. Gradually, she had learned to respect the boundaries that Amy had established and had developed a genuinely affectionate relationship with Nathan without the pressure of controlling her daughter's life. It was a Thursday in December when Michael arrived home earlier than usual from work, finding Amy in the garden watching Nathan play with his new toys. Summer was coming and the afternoon was warm and sunny. "You're home early today," Amy commented, smiling when Michael sat beside her on the grass. "I had a surprise to prepare," he said, kissing her forehead. "Actually, several surprises." Nathan crawled to Michael and pulled himself up to stand, supporting himself on his legs. "Daddy!" he exclaimed with joy. "Hi, champion," said Michael, picking him up. "Daddy has a very important news for you and Mommy." Amy frowned, curious. "What kind of news?" Michael smiled mysteriously. "First, I need to tell a story I should have told months ago, but I was waiting for the right moment." He settled better on the grass, with Nathan in his lap and Amy by his side. "Remember the night we met? When you asked for the leftovers from my plate at the restaurant?" As if I could forget. "Well, there's something about that night you don't know." Michael took a deep breath. "I wasn't there by chance. I was commemorating a very sad date for me." Amy turned to face him completely. "It was the 10-year anniversary of Rebecca's passing. Every year on that same day, I would go to that restaurant, alone, eat her favorite food, and try to feel some connection with the memories we had. It was my ritual of mourning." Amy's eyes filled with tears. "Michael. But that night was different. For the first time in 10 years, I couldn't concentrate on memories of the past because a brave woman with a baby in her arms was showing me what unconditional love really meant. Nathan was playing with the button on Michael's shirt, oblivious to the importance of the moment. You changed everything, Amy, not just because you made me feel alive again, but because you taught me that it's possible to honor the past while embracing the future. Why are you telling me this now? Michael smiled and carefully took a small velvet box from his pocket. Because today is exactly 1 year since we met. And because I want this date to stop being about loss and become about finding true love. Amy gasped when she saw the box. Michael. Amy Parker, he said, kneeling on the grass with Nathan still in his arms. Will you marry me? Will you be my wife and let me officially be Nathan's father? The box opened, revealing an elegant but not ostentatious ring, exactly the type of jewelry Amy would choose for herself. Tears were flowing freely down Amy's face now. Are you sure? Sure that this is what you want? An ordinary life with baby cries in the middle of the night, dirty diapers and morning laughter, first steps, bedtime stories, and the purest love I've ever known? Michael smiled. Amy, I've never been more certain of anything in my life. Nathan, sensing the emotion around him, began to clap and laugh as if he knew something wonderful was happening. Yes, whispered Amy. Yes, I want to marry you. Michael slid the ring onto her finger and kissed her deeply, with Nathan between them, laughing and trying to participate in the hug. But there's more, said Michael when they separated. Remember I said I had several surprises? What else? Spoke with a lawyer about adoption. If you agree, I want to legally adopt Nathan. I want him to have my last name and for me to be officially recognized as his father. Amy sobbed with emotion. Nathan Bennett. Nathan Parker Bennett, Michael corrected. I want to honor your history too. Nathan, as if understanding they were talking about him, gave a big toothless smile and said clearly, Daddy, Mommy. They laughed through the tears, embracing, like the family they had become. There's one last surprise, said Michael. I don't know if my heart can take more. Michael laughed. You'll like this one. Mrs. Francis from the daycare called today. She's retiring at the end of the year and wants to know if you'd like to take over as coordinator of the daycare. Seriously? Amy's eyes lit up. She said she's never seen anyone with such natural talent for dealing with children, and that Nathan would be an excellent advertisement for the quality of care offered there. But I don't have training in education. You will. I've already looked into specialization courses. If you want, I can help with the costs, as an investment in our future. Amy looked at Michael with renewed admiration. He not only loved her, but believed in her potential and encouraged her to grow professionally. How do you always know exactly what to say? Because I love you. And when we truly love someone, we pay attention to their dreams. That night, after Nathan fell, asleep in his crib, Amy and Michael sat on the porch watching the stars. Amy twisted the ring on her finger, still hardly believing all of it was real. Michael, can I confess something? Of course. That first night when you offered me help, a part of me thought it was too good to be true, that at some point you would realize you had made a mistake. And now? Now I realize that we were both lost, each in our own way. You, drowning in grief and isolation. Me, fighting against hopelessness and loneliness. And somehow we found each other exactly when we needed it most. Michael took her hand and kissed the engagement ring. You know what's most amazing? Nathan wasn't even planned when we met, but today I can't imagine our family without him. It's as if everything conspired to bring us together at the right moment. Do you believe in destiny? I believe in love, said Michael, and I believe that some people are meant to find each other, no matter how unlikely the path seems. 3 months later, in a simple but moving ceremony in the garden of their house, Michael and Amy were married in front of close friends and family. Nathan, dressed in a little tuxedo, served as the ring bearer in Elizabeth's arms, who cried with pride for her daughter. Vera Helen, who had finally accepted the relationship, Mrs. Francis and other work colleagues were present, celebrating not just the wedding, but the family that had formed in such an unexpected way. During the vows, Michael looked at Amy and said, "You taught me that courage isn't not having fear, but acting despite the fear. You taught me that family isn't just blood but choice, and you taught me that true love doesn't need to be perfect to be transformative." Amy, with tears in her eyes, responded, "You showed me that we deserve to be loved not just despite our circumstances, but for who we are as people. You showed me that it's possible to trust again and that some dreams are even more beautiful when shared." When the judge declared them husband and wife, Nathan applauded enthusiastically in his grandmother's arms, and everyone laughed through the tears. 2 years later, Michael was in the same garden, now watching Nathan at 3 years old play with his newborn little sister, Sophia. Amy, radiant and fulfilled, successfully managed the Little Dreams daycare and had become a reference in early childhood education in the region. Elizabeth, who had married a kind widower she had met at church, visited on Sundays and was the doting grandmother that Nathan and Sophia adored. "Can you believe it?" asked Amy, joining Michael on the porch. "What?" "How our life has changed. 3 years ago I was asking for leftover food. Today we have a beautiful family, jobs we love, a bright future ahead." Michael pulled her close. "Can you believe it all started with you being brave enough to ask for help when you needed it most? And you being generous enough to offer not just food but hope." Nathan ran to them, holding a drawing he had made at school. "Daddy, Mommy, look, it's our family." The drawing showed 4 stick figures, 2 adults and 2 smaller children, all holding hands under a big yellow sun. "It's beautiful, my love," said Amy, kissing the boy's head. "We're all happy," declared Nathan with the simple wisdom of a child. "We are indeed," agreed Michael, looking at his family with a gratitude that grew each day. That night, after the children were sleeping, Michael and Amy sat on the porch, as they did every night, watching the stars and talking about their days. "Michael," said Amy, "sometimes I think about what would have happened if I hadn't had the courage to approach your table that night." "I think about that too. And I'm sure that, one way or another, we would have found each other. People who are meant for each other always find a way." "You really believe that?" "I do. I believe that true love is stronger than circumstances. I believe that when we're ready to love and be loved, the universe conspires to make it happen." Amy smiled, remembering the scared young woman she had been, living in a car with a baby in her arms. Today, she was a fulfilled woman, a loved wife, and a confident mother of 2 wonderful children. "You know what the most incredible part of our whole story is?" she said. "What?" "It's that we didn't need to pretend to be other people to be loved. You loved me when I had nothing to offer except determination and a baby, and I loved you not for your money, but for the kindness of your heart." "And that's why our story will last forever," said Michael, kissing her hand. "Because it was built on the most solid foundation that exists, true love and mutual respect." As the stars shone above them, Michael and Amy knew that their journey was still just beginning. There would be challenges ahead, as in any marriage and family, but they would face everything together, with the strength that